Hello. I'm gonna take this microphone. Hello, this is me, earlier. And I've been in front of a computer for my entire life, which explains my very early onset wrist pains. And I've been coding since I was 13 and working in the tech industry on various startups and companies and projects, from cybersecurity to a gamification startup, doing much of what Dora was talking about, and to user experience and consulting and education. And for a long time, all of that kind of looked like this, really fancy, and it felt great. But throughout that journey, I often felt that there was something not quite right about it. There was like an icky feeling at the back of my head. And working in the tech industry was always really fun, but something about it, it was just icky. And this talk is kind of about the things that I discovered since I started exploring where that sense of ickiness was coming from. And it's kind of a systemic exploration of diversity itself. So I knew that contradiction, that ickiness, it lied somewhere between the current reality and technology's promise. You know, that promise to fix healthcare, to promote equality, to promote diversity, to connect us, to fix education and prevent crisis. And all the complex problems we're so obviously facing in the 21st century. But when I would interact with the innovation spaces, the tech scene and the startup scene, it feels like we, as society and as tech industry, it feels like we're creating more of the same. And not just that, we're also actively compounding the crisis we're already facing, selling more of what we don't need and extracting more than we actually have. And the face of tech innovation really today is not really creating diversity. It's kind of turning more things into versions of the same thing. Like, we're even recycling art and clapping at the new innovation of now we can do more things the same way did before. Great. And technology is getting more powerful, but the innovation is kind of predictable. So we're not really truly creating new things, or when we do, they kind of get buried under what already exists. But a few decades ago, we had those dreams of those kind and lush futures. And now the best dreams we have are still like recycled and Ghiblified versions of the old. So when the definition of innovation itself is making things in new ways and new and diverse ways, why aren't we then actually making new things? Why are we making more diverse, weird things? So if we take a step back and look at the natural world's development over millions of years, diversity has been the key element in creating strong systems, and it's natural. Diversity itself is something that evolves. Even our reproductive systems are created to combine different DNAs, so we make new different people. And evolution has worked that out. The more ways in which we do things, the more we can ensure that if one approach fails, there's an alternative. Even with software, if all critical software depended on a single package, a single vulnerability could wreck entire digital ecosystems. So the lack of diversity isn't really something we can fix by applying more patches to a badly designed system or applying more policies to a broken system. It's really about designing systems that allow innovation and allow the underlying goals of what we're trying to build that will ultimately determine the outcome of what we're trying to do. So what I'm proposing here is the way we measure success is what will make the difference. So human brains really like measuring. Like, our rational brains figured that out really long ago. Like, number go up, more good, dopamine for brain. Number go down, no reward, bad. In some ways, it is that simple. And in chasing progress, we tend to forget to actually pay attention to the measurement process and how it itself affects our work. And we look at these kind of simple rewards. So, for example, with Facebook, as everyone here has taken an example of, like, engagement metrics go up, numbers go up, but what we get is this result of social polarization, hate speech, and even genocide in Myanmar. And for example, in schools, standardized tests make education outcome numbers go up, but usually make students more or less creative, and they feel much worse. So a Harvard study found that the scientific grant system tends to reward moderately novel research proposals over really groundbreaking ones. And the ones that were really novel and really new received by far the worst scores, which kind of makes sense. Failure just means numbers going down, and we have a much lower tolerance for it. We've built systems that do not really reward failure, but we must be okay with some failure. And we can't measure just how many things failed, but all of the things that didn't fail, how much did we actually create? Does anyone know why I have this lizard on my slides? No? Okay. So in the 1990s, a super random government-funded project investigated the venom of these lizards. And it was obvious to everyone that this wasn't very interesting research, but they did it anyway. And fast forward to now, a compound found in this venom has become GLP-1. Do you know what that is? That is Ozempic, or the thing that made Novo Nordisk really famous, and Denmark famous. And is an absolute legend of a treatment for diabetes and obesity, and now it turns out even Alzheimer's. So it shows how trying all kinds of obscure things that don't really yield nice numbers going up immediately results in real innovation. Like, the really unexpected breakthroughs are in the really unexpected places. And I think, maybe our obsession with quick rewards is because we've made measuring so accessible, like, in the recent decades. I grew up in a system of standardized tests, and I probably put thousands of hours into games like RuneScape, where every action gives you XP. Like, this numeric reward of, like, the only point of the game is to make the numbers go up. That's the only thing you do there. And RuneScape in this way, like, mirrors the general trend of turning human activities into skills that need to be improved, turning even memories to likes and followers. And in the tech space, there's a really strong push to measure things in numbers, in krona, to distill this complex human behavior down into spreadsheets. And there's almost this cultist mantra around innovation metrics that are treated as inherently good. This market share, return on investment, and the concept that you can't improve what you can't measure, not often questioning whether we should improve what we can measure. And we tend to really neglect things that are difficult to measure. We struggle with measuring happiness, so we use GDP as an approximation. And we don't really know how to measure joy or beauty or kindness with numbers. And even bringing the instruments of measurement into these sacred spaces of beauty feels inherently wrong, like an inherent conflict of the left and right brain. Like, if you were forced to rate and compare all of your friendships on a scale of 1 to 10, like, it's just, there's the things that humans do that are so important and complex and multidimensional, and it seems wrong and practically impossible to make that a thing to optimize for. So our innovation just tends to center around the easy numbers. And to some extent, this is a call for innovating measurement itself, and finding solutions to measure a couple of things. But I don't even know if it is a call for that, because I'm also still grappling with the philosophy of, like, what if we knew how to measure happiness in meaning? Would we want to optimize for that? Like, what would happen if we did? Would we lock ourselves into a world of optimizing for that number, like locking ourselves in, like Dora was talking about? This, fortunately, is not my startup yet, but my startup career began in this flashy cocktail disco ball environment where every innovation had to be 10x or it wasn't absolutely worth it. And my first step, as I mentioned, was built around gamification and using the vulnerabilities of the brain to sell people things that they need. And wanting to build things and solve problems, I internalized that mindset of that being good, because all the venture capital people were clapping and being like, this is great. And I knew it was icky, and I did leave quite shortly after founding the thing. It later got sold for a lot of money, but I wasn't there, and I'm happy I wasn't. But yeah, building the cognitive tools of figuring out why and deconstructing this internalized Trojan horse of why that felt good, it took a lot of time. And now I've been working on Tvík for 3 years. And yeah, my mission is to make Icelandic learning great again. But my secret undercover mission is to innovate the startup concept itself. Like, to research what happens if you measure differently, when you really try to build a startup ignoring all the rules of startups. And I work in language learning. And if you've ever tried to speak a new language and failed, it's not because you're stupid. It's because it's really scary, and you feel your identity ripped into pieces when you try to piece yourself back together in a language and environment of new symbols and new things. And feeling misunderstood and feeling not included is just the worst thing, that would be one of the worst things that we can feel. And that is the real problem to be solved with language learning, not giving people more vocabulary apps. And humans are good at doing these things, but humans are really slow and expensive. So we need some kind of technology to step in. But what we need to measure then is not to optimize for a digital dopamine delivery system like Duolingo, but something deeper. Like, we don't want to measure how many seconds people spend on the application. We want to spend We want to measure how are people feeling better? Are people feeling more confident? Are people feeling less anxious? And yeah, so instead of more gamification to make it really addictive to learn Icelandic, we didn't do that. But we wrote the story of this like eccentric Icelandic teacher robot that sometimes gets really depressed. And we wrote a whole soundtrack that's about to drop on Spotify. And we spent hours drawing hologram sheep. And we debated the sound effect that you should make when you open things. And we held a big launch rave. And we put 1 million Easter eggs into this thing. Like there's this annoying guy called Gunnar in one of the simulations that shows up. And if you make mistakes, he starts talking to you in English, like real people. And yeah, basically everyone dies in the end of the story. Don't tell them that I'm still doing it. The best friend of the user moved to Denmark. And yeah, we give everyone a discount as well that asks for it, regardless of their financial situation, which is so far about 150 people that would not have had to access to Tvík otherwise. And there's even an official manifesto, like a real project. And yeah, the main inspirations for Tvík were not Duolingo or Uber or SpaceX. They were mostly Disco Elysium, which is a dystopian Estonian detective RPG, and Scooter, which is just a German techno-rave band, and Marvin from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and my time on a sheep farm. And yeah, the goal wasn't to create an Uber for language learning, it was to create the like disco rave solar punk Minecraft of language learning. And the results are really good. Numbers go up. There is an increase in anxiety around the 4th week of Tvík. And my number of, like my brain of like, please make numbers go up again is like, please fix it. But you know, to do that, I have to go and talk to real humans, figure out why they aren't feeling better, and you know, fix that complex and sometimes messy but solvable problem. So I asked our Discord community, and they mentioned week 4 is when we finally tell them that a single adjective in Icelandic can take 120 different forms. And so that, I guess, explains it. Maybe it's not something we need to fix. Maybe that anxiety is completely justified. But yeah, the process isn't always gratifying, but the results are an infinite pool of joy. Like, so far, about 4,000 people have signed up for Tvík. I'm about to sign a deal with a really big company. I can't tell who yet, but they're big. And I can quite reliably wake up to some kind of message of gratitude almost every day. And we've spent around like 7,000 krona on marketing. But people just tell each other about this. And there's hundreds of people on the Discord server. They're coming up with new things as well, hosting events. Someone volunteered to be a community moderator. Someone offered to create a lopapeysa. And people were on the server before this event. They're like, oh, are you going to Gamithra's event? I'm like, oh, they know about this. Some of them are here. And yeah, unsurprisingly, the market of teaching Icelandic isn't a huge money-making machine, and it was never really optimized for that. Half of our revenue we've given away in discounts, and if I had wanted to turn Tvík into this money-making machine, the design decisions would have been very different. But I can pay rent. Sometimes I can even go to Hakup instead of Krónan. And most importantly, the icky feeling is gone. And even then, people ask Tvík to set up a donation page so they could send us more money, which is amazing. And yeah, now I've spent 3 years on this. And honestly, it's been stressful, it's complicated, but in a good way. I feel super energized still. Like, the work isn't sexy, but it's nourishing. And most days in the office look like this. And most of the work is, the mental load of dealing with that, like, your project doesn't fit in a box. All the grant applications that are available somehow don't apply to you because you're doing something else. You're trying to smash the project into a box that it wasn't made for, because no grant application forms expects Icelandic learning software that's also a community-based language school, and a story, and an art collective, and a dance party. And there's this, glamorous picture of innovation being this disco balls and cocktails. But I think real innovation comes from embracing this complexity, this things that really make us human. And it's not really always pleasant or fun. It doesn't really give you this instant number go up hit. And it really isn't rewarded by the systems, and none of the venture capitalists are clapping. And just, embracing complexity is quite difficult, and it's messy. And, the process might look more like this. And I think innovation, the type that actually transforms systems and processes in a healthy way, It's not necessarily beautiful, it's not fancy, it's not always a good story, but it feels kind. And it doesn't mean that every project needs to feel good, that the founders are supposed to be crying, or that you can get away with a poor business model just by having good intentions. No, it doesn't mean that. And sometimes good things can come out of bad intentions too, but in a world accelerating towards ecological crisis and the critical concentration of power, this approach isn't just ethical, it is practical, because systems that are built on extraction eventually exhaust what they extract. And creating scarcity inherently leads us towards animosity. It leads us towards disconnection. And systems built on care regenerate their foundations. And we really need those resilient and diverse systems to survive the upcoming crisis of the 21st century. And for that, we need really diverse goals and diverse funding and diverse boxes for the goals and a system that allows for mistakes to be made. And yeah, if we have diverse goals, we attract diverse people and we allow for complexity. Because efficiency is often the enemy of complexity. It strips away the things we don't really need, but it also takes away the stuff that really makes us human, like culture and languages, because you can't really profit of them that much. And in this very polarized world where corporations are investing billions into showing us messages about what we should look like or consume or create and defining our metrics of success for us, many of us really struggle to know which direction to go. But I think and hope that we already kind of know that we have this instinct of care built into us. And I hope we know that's when something feels healthy. But it also matters that you measure yourself in some ways. I'm going to explain what that means. But I think knowing your values and knowing your metrics and protecting the measuring process of yourself also defines what kind of projects you will go into or what you will do with your life. And if you don't understand and protect the metrics that define you, you are at risk of unconsciously importing these useless metrics like likes or grades or followers or weight and allow them to quantify your self-worth. Like feel about yourself when the numbers go up and down. And for about 5 years, it's been a mission of mine to make an attempt to kind of quantify myself and project manage myself. And I love numbers. Like I enjoy figuring out why things change, what changes them. I've got massive spreadsheets of data for of my own health and sleep and whatever. And I've got 5 years of public JSON data online about my mood. And it's all available on my webpage and people can see how I'm feeling. There's 15 different variables. And I've gone even as far as tattooing some of the core metrics that I want myself to be measured by physically, so I cannot ever forget them. Yes, they are here. And checking in with those values that are a commitment that I've made for myself, they are a part of the measuring process itself. What I've learned, most of all, is that the things that I measure, I train my brain to pay attention to, and that directs how I behave. These are the numbers that go up for me, and that makes me feel good. But you don't have to build this dashboards, but you can, and you're allowed to figure out what you are. Each of us is working on something, and even while we're not working at the job, we are little points of culture and values around friends and strangers and in our communities. And it's very much in our power and therefore also a responsibility to shape culture and shape the interfaces of how humans do things. The little values and nudges and mazes and the details that form our experience of life together. I'm done, but to wrap this up, we said in the event description that we would have innovative refreshments. And to be honest, we first just put it there without really thinking about what it meant. We fell into the same trap of innovative sounds cool, let's do it, for just the sake of innovating. But so then we had to actually sit down and be what is an innovative snack? What is an out-of-the-box snack? Does food need to be innovated, right? And we ended up with these cubes and these boxes for a metaphor of thinking outside of the box or inside the box, or also the building blocks of assembling your own thing. We kind of fought over this. There was drama. Arnar was let's just go to Krónan and get crisps and soda vat. And everyone had an opinion. But in the end, the whole thing was collaborative. It was fun. There were difficult conversations. They led to some kind of outcomes that you can see there. In the end, it was something created by the community and thought together, created mostly led by Ingrid, who's there, and with brownies by Ben. And it all just came together. So I want to end on this note of, I think innovation is kind of the creative process itself, the kindness you show for ideas and the boldness with which you carry your own forwards, and the compromises we make along the way, and sometimes the lack of clarity of where you're going, but just knowing that you need to go somewhere. And the friends you make along the way, of course. I'd like to very much thank Arnar and Dora too, also, when I asked them, do you want to host this event where we question innovation on Innovation Week? And they were like, yes, let's do it. I really appreciate that. Thank you for jumping on this with me.